They also had a quick discussion with the project team. Councillor Johansson asked a question: would the community boards be given rights to make recommendations on metropolitan issues? The answer is under the proposed governance partnership agreement, boards will be engaged on metropolitan projects within their community board area. They will be engaged early in the planning and development phase at a point where the community board feedback can be utilised in the decision-making process. So this project doesn't go so far as recommending all boards have the right to make a recommendation on every metropolitan issue. It was actually outside the scope and intended coverage of this project, but through quite extensive discussion with community boards and with councillors, the community board participation in council decision making is quite tightly defined within the proposed agreement. In responding to the questions on what might be metropolitan and what might be local, the only thing that I'd have to add is, if it is the wish of the council, this matter can be considered as a priority for the first review of this agreement, which, if council approve these recommendations, is within 6 months of the new council. So we can see how it goes and all commit to gain any greater clarity on this that's required. And thank you very much for giving us the time to do that, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Look, I forgot to say that Dion's an apology for the rest of the afternoon. I think everyone knows that he's not well, and I've sent him home to rest.
So the multi-use arena is a decision for the council?
Yes, it is.
Right, so there's it goes to the community board first or anything like that?
It's a council, it's metropolitan, it's council.
And the red zone would be a decision for the council?
I would absolutely assume so. It's metropolitan, it's citywide, and it would probably affect a number of boards, so it would be metropolitan.
And so what's the cut-off point? At what point is something a metropolitan, and at what point is it a local facility?
The cut-off point is determined by using the framework in the appendix to the partnership agreement. Essentially, when it's contained within a local area, it's a local park, it's a local facility, it's encompassed within that local area, it's board. If it has network permutations or if it's a citywide issue, it's metropolitan. Both the boards and council can examine this on a case-by-case basis.
Southwest Leisure Centre is still a metropolitan facility?
Yeah, Southwest is at this point in time a metropolitan facility because it's part of a wider network of swimming pools across the town.
Linwood is a metropolitan facility?
Linwood's a metropolitan facility, but earlier in the year council specifically resolved...
I get that.
Yep.
I get that. Is there a capital funding cut-off point, or is it just the sort of vague definition?
No, if it's a facility contained within a local area and has a local application, local influence, it's local. So, for example, the Riccarton Community Facility is a board delegated process. The Southwest would not be. Same with
sorry, Leanne, just I appreciate getting the response from staff. It still feels to me that the whole issue of metropolitan versus local is not clearly enough defined. Previously, we've had an understanding that if something reaches across more than 2 board areas, and that was under the old system, that it would be metropolitan. It just seems to me that we need to get some clarity so that we don't get submitters coming to a community board for what is a council decision, or we don't get submitters going to council for what is a community board decision. It just doesn't feel.
Are you saying that the mechanism that is attached to the partnership agreement is not sufficient to clarify that matter? Because it
It's
looks to
not
me
clear.
like
And-
where there's doubt, there is a simple process to establish whether it's one or the other.
Yeah.
Well, there should be just a really simple principle, and the principle that Peter Mitchell put forward when the Central City
That's a
A
good
delegation
start.
were removed was that boards, because of their terms of reference, would have the ability to make recommendations even if they weren't making decisions. And that's kind of been the thing. So if you take places like the Groins, Kiwi2, the lake that we've just been talking about, there's no doubt that they are metropolitan facilities, and they do have a wide range of people that use them from across the city, from various community board areas.
Yeah, I thought we were moving away from that sort of very strict analysis, right, and looking at more at what was an appropriate decision-making framework. But anyway, John, do you want to respond to that?
This question has been raised a number of times throughout the project process, and as a result, we asked legal services to examine the legislation and come up with the process. The process is contained in Appendix 1. It's been workshopped extensively. It has been refined. The position that was reached in the workshops and the recommendation to council is let's go with this for 6 months. If we feel that it needs a review or tightening up, let's do it. But this is precisely what the project was asked to do. It's taken considerable amount of time and engagement to get here, and we'd just like to field test it a few times and see if it works or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, look,
but just so I'm
Okay,
You're not
look,
removing-
I don't really want this debate in questions. So it seems to me that the concerns that people are raising is that there seems to be an issue as to whether more clarity can be provided around this. I mean, there are some of the facilities that you've mentioned so far, if they don't if they don't fall within the council metropolitan decision framework that's here, you know,
the point I would make
it's
is
clear, but it's.
Sure.
I'm frustrated because this has been through a really good process, and we've got to this point, and we need to move on. But I've got two people that want to speak, so I'll take Sarah and Mike, and I'll see if I can come up with some.
Thanks, John. My understanding was that what we were going to plan under the community facilities was that facilities which had a network impact, such as the two new pools, the location would be the location and scope would be council, but all of the design stuff, like the Linwood pool, would be at the community board level.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that's what the intent is of that. But that's not quite the wording that's in there. But would it help if, so for example, if we just put that wording in for the Hornby one? Because the wording there's for Linwood.
All I would like is 3 sentences so that I could explain to Mrs. Brown what the rules are.
What the rules are set out in the attachment, which basically says that decision-making responsibility for non-regulatory activity of the council, particular to a community board area, should be exercised by the community board. It's a local decision.
Yep, no
By
problem
the
with that.
council, if the nature of the activity is such that decision-making on a district-wide basis will better promote the interests of all communities, having regard to the following factors: the impact of the decision, effective decision-making, etc., etc. If the allocation of decision-making responsibility becomes an issue to be dealt with by application of the principles referred to above, it must first be raised with the general manager responsible for the activity proposed. Any recommendations to be made will be approved by the ELT before being considered by the council, which will decide whether or not a matter should be dealt with by the council as a whole rather than a community board. So it seems to me that you know, the multi-use arena ain't going to pass that test as a local project, as a local decision. But QE2 might pass that test depending on what the decisions are.
Yep.
So there are some decisions that we have to make sure are network compliant, but there are other decisions that we actually want the local communities to make those decisions about the shape and design, as we have with Linwood. So there are various approaches that we will take. I actually think this clarifies the matter much better than the previous thing that sort of had this ridiculous rule that said if it covers more than 2 community boards, you're automatically a metro project. I thought we were trying to fix that problem.
Yep.
So I just think that people can, and it might be that if you just add to that, dealt with by the council as a whole, rather than a community board or more than one community board, because it may well be like we've done in terms of some instances, is to refer it to 2 community boards to form a hearings panel to make a recommendation or a decision. Technically they'd be able to if we decided that. So
We can certainly do that.
yeah.
Yep.
Or just put S in brackets after it.
One question.
Yeah.
Thank you. The paragraph 5.1.
Of the report, Councillor Chen?
5.1. You particularly mentioned this agreement should be signed by the mayor and the 7 chair of the committee board member. But regarding to the staff recommendation, the paragraph 3, if mayor today sign this one, whether those the 7 chair of the committee board member they agree, or if they are not agree, how to remediate this effect?
Yeah. Look, thank you for the question. It's proposed that a report will be prepared for each community board so they can consider the partnership agreement and ideally authorise the chair to sign on their behalf. All I can say is this project has been workshopped numerous times with all community boards.
Okay.
Board chairs have been copied into every change, every iteration. We've incorporated every bit of feedback, and last Friday at board chairs meeting, we discussed this, and there was a great deal of optimism and support.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
And a great deal of thanks.
Can I just point out something that'd be really useful? So if a community, with the metropolitan thing, there's a thing in the partnership agreement that's a clause that says if a community board considers a particular decision is better made at the community board level, it may ask for a report to the council regarding the delegation. And in the meantime, before the 6-month review, that's probably the easiest way to go forward. I can't see many more facilities actually in the next short term. But I'm quite keen to see the Horswell Hornby Riccarton board have sign off on the detail of their facility. But that'll have to go through
It'll still have to come back. It has to come back to council because of the network impact.
Yep.
So I just think that
the scope of it does.
they've come up with a neat solution. So I'd much rather have somebody. We've had a mover and a seconder. So I'd like to open it up for debate. Sarah.
Yeah, I was just.
Yep. Sarah. Or do you want to close off the debate, or do you want to open it? Open it. Yep.
Right, so in my office at home, I have a folder full of papers and notes from the early work on this from 2014 and 2015, when I was chair of the Headley Ferrymead Community Board. And I know it's taken a while, but I'm really glad that we're here at last and getting the extended delegations and governance partnership agreement in place and ready for the next council and community boards. It's not perfect, but it's a really, really good start. And I'm looking forward to getting it underway and then reviewed in the new term with the new council and community boards. As an organisation, we've often had to be reactive to the many things being thrown at us, and the urgency of that work clearly needs to be taken as a priority. But what has sometimes needed a nudge, like a notice of motion, is the important but non-urgent work, such as developing our partnership with boards more fully, so that we can govern together in the best interests of the city. Christchurch already has one of the broadest sets of delegations to community boards in the country, and it mostly works really well. Boards have delegations to make full and final decisions on issues in the area such as parks, playgrounds, parking restrictions, reserve management plans, and community grant funding. They also consider reports and make many recommendations to the full council on facility rebuilds, leases, park names and other local issues where I've never seen the council make a decision contrary to the board. Boards have a greater knowledge of local communities and consider the same reports as council on these matters, so it's been silly to have the duplication of decision making, and I'm pleased to say that that's changing, with the responsibility for the final decision now laying with the boards for those. For me today though, it's the partnership agreement that is the most important piece of paper. Formalising the community board plans developed in partnership with their community as strategic documents for council planning will give the board a lot more influence than they have ever had. And while we're only signing off on the partnership agreement and delegations today, this council has been deliberately moving in the same direction throughout the term and adding delegations to boards for local facility rebuilds on an ad hoc basis. This will formalise that, and I'm looking forward to it getting started.
Yanni? Oh, okay. Phil?
Thank you. I'll try and be brief. Most of you know that I chaired the Sprayed and Heathcote, now Cashmere Community Board, for 4 terms, and like Sarah, I agree. I think that this is these are great steps forward. I think Christchurch has had a tradition of community boards overall working really, really well. And I think now, though, with greater delegations, I think they'll work even better. And as has been indicated, all of the board chairs, all of them are really supportive of this. And the strength will be, in fact, how, as a council, we can use the leverage through the community boards from our communities and from our residents. And it's that strength of engagement that where the community boards will give us that power. Key thing for us, of course, is that we have this will really improve our decision making as a council and enhance it. So, and clearly, though, the whole working of our community boards has always depended on goodwill and cooperation and partnership, and that's what this is about. So I strongly commend these delegations.
Glenn?
Thank you. When I first came down here in '94, I remember my first interactions with the Shirley Papanui, or was it just Shirley Community Board? And I remember people such as Dennis Hills and really capable, good people like that, and was always impressed with their work. And it struck me too that the boards at the time had a good degree of power. So this is another good way by which to attract people, good candidates in the forthcoming election to community boards, I think, actually giving them some power to do things, and fully supportive of this. It's also a good sign of a local democracy, the decentralisation of power. It's a very healthy thing. So hope we'll all support it today.
David?
Thanks. As one who was on a community board in 1995, it was great back then. We had, as an area board, greater delegations in certain areas. We had our own transport engineers, our own green space person, and a whole host of things, and it worked quite well. We've centralised, and now we're looking at decentralising again, and I'm all in favour of that. When it comes to the current document we've got before us, the original draft that was presented raised a fair amount of controversy, where community boards saw it a wee bit in favour of council rather than community boards, but I'm pleased to see that there's been a lot of work and collaboration amongst the community boards to come up with a document that appears to be agreeable on all fronts. So I'm very supportive of what we've got here. It's a step forward in giving our community boards more delegations, and I certainly hope that in the future, although previous speakers said that community boards' decisions have always been respected at council level, there have been instances where they haven't, and I really would like to see us go forward with more confidence in our community boards to be able to propose and recommend decisions and have it supported across the board. So I think it's a good paper. It's taken a while to get there, and I'm really pleased that the collaborative effort that has gone in to get to where we are has been achieved. Thanks.
Mike?
Thanks. Yeah, I agree, David. It has taken a while to get here. As a chair last term on a community board, we tried to make this happen, and for whatever reason it didn't. But community boards don't give up. Councillors that champion community boards don't give up, and the reason why we don't is because we want the best outcome for the communities. It is a community board that's at the grassroots. It's a community board that knows their community, not the city council. Local decisions need to be made at a local level, so I'll be supporting this. But I acknowledge there's actually still more work to be done, and I think one of the important things is actually giving community boards the ability to make submissions to notified resource consent applications. So I hope to see that come through in the review.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, who's on?
Yeah, Yanni.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'll support this today. I think it is long overdue, but I think it really just it's frustrating that it doesn't pick up on some of the key things that were raised through the initial feedback, and that really is about local service delivery. And I think we need to move forward as a council by not just changing the delegations, actually putting services back into the local service centres so people can get the support that they need, both at a local decision-making level, but also at a community level. The huge frustration has been over the last 10 years has basically been that community boards make requests for things to happen, and it goes into a big black, and it takes years and years and years for some things to be progressed because it comes into a centralised process. So I think we really need to start addressing putting back staff at a local community board service centre level to actually get those things done in a timely manner. I do have concern that giving more delegations to community boards without the resources and without the capital expenditure basically means that they will be hamstrung and they will have an increased level of frustration. I hope I'm wrong, and I appreciate the work that's gone into this. I totally agree that the issue around resource consents and submissions needs to be firmly addressed with a priority, as does the issue of the central city. People in the central city vote for community board members to represent them, and they have every right to have the same level of democracy as any other person in our city. And at the moment, they don't, and that is wrong, and it needs to change. People at a local community board level should have a right to go to their community board, even on metropolitan issues, and have their views known. Some of the best successes we have had in the city, for example, the old Lancaster Park, the best relationship out of any residents group and a major stadium in New Zealand, if not the Southern Hemisphere, because of the work that people had done through the local community board with that local community group around a metropolitan asset. I would hate for that to be done away with the resolutions we're passing today. So thank you for those that have worked on this. There's still a long way to go, and I think we still need to turn our minds to local service delivery, but this is a start today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's